All right, welcome to another episode of the My New Normal podcast. We are here with Dr. Kyle Bergquist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Megan with Movement RX.
I'm P.E. Kea. I am one of the coaches for the adaptive strength and conditioning classes that we offer in San Diego at CrossFit 1904.
Yeah, and I'm one of the physical therapists with Movement RX. So in addition to doing this podcast, I'm seeing patients for physical therapy, but we have a lot of corporate wellness stuff going on that I do a lot of behind the scenes work. So it's fun to have a hand in a lot of different pots. So first, before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First to Highlight, they have 40% off for new clients. So that is very exciting. I love their gear. New Normal 40 is that coupon code that'll be in the show notes. So New Normal 40 gets you 40% off for Highlight, which is a fitness lifestyle brand founded on the core belief that a company's impact can and should live beyond the products that they sell. As they build on a foundation of innovation and quality, their energy is equally focused on inspiring the well-being of our community. So thank you to Highlight for that really generous coupon code. And then we also have RX Smart Gear, who is offering 15% off of their products with the gift code NHLBRX. And 15% off for the online adaptive trainer course with the Ready State. And that's code MyNewNormal15. So all of that's in the show notes so people can check that out and take advantage of those discounts. Some things that we have coming up, our next adaptive trainer course that Movement RX puts on in person is here in San Diego, but the one here in February is actually sold out, which is very exciting. And the next one that people can actually sign up for is in Colorado Springs. So if you've been looking for an excuse to take a vacation to Colorado, come hang out with us for a day and learn about working with adaptive athletes. And, whether you're an adaptive athlete yourself or a coach or a trainer, any kind of provider that just wants to learn more about helping people that have adaptive needs to be able to work out and get the same stimulus as any athlete in the gym. So we're excited to be offering that training course. And then we also have an in-person strength and conditioning course.
If you're in the San Diego area and you are a veteran or an adaptive athlete, we offer adaptive strength and conditioning here at CrossFit 1904. We do it on Monday, Tuesday, and Fridays from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. It's a great way for you to find community, find your tribe, get a really great workout in, and figure out how you can adapt it to your new normal.
Yeah. So thanks again, Dr. Kyle, for coming and hanging out with us on this podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently working on.
Oh man, where do I begin? So my background is sports medicine and chiropractic. I also have a fellowship in stem cell regenerative medicine from A4M. And what I'm up to now is actually trying to put a big dent in the veteran suicide rate. So that's with our nonprofit called Healing Our Heroes Foundation, which was founded a couple years ago. And we're looking at reframing the way civilians look at quote unquote heroes, right? So a hero to us is somebody who's living their best life after service and finding their new normal. So that's what I'm up to now. I'm also a CEO of a company called Serving Impact, which actually works with practitioners, providers to help them have a greater impact in their business and gain operational excellence around it. I'm also involved in film work. I've done several documentary films, mostly highlighting veteran causes. And I wrote a book this year as well about Imposter Syndrome. So you tell me what you want to dive into.
Got a lot going on. That's exciting.
Yeah, a few things here and there.
What's the title of your book? Do you have that nailed down yet?
Yeah, it just Imposter Syndrome is what we've dialed down to. It started with a million different titles, but that's where we've landed. And yeah, that's something that I learned about a few years ago that I had been struggling with for a long time. I kind of find myself in all these situations and then go, what the heck am I doing here? And I didn't know why. I always second guess myself. And so I started piecing together emotionally and got there. So it's kind of the journey that I've been on, and then ways to overcome that as well. So
yeah, that kind of answers, well, maybe we can dive into it a little bit more, but my question I was going to ask you are what new normal has come up that forced you to transform or change?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, I'm not a veteran myself, right? So I've had this imposter syndrome about being even in the veteran space and trying to conquer this big problem, right? So
Mhm.
I constantly find myself in situations where I feel like I'm pushing for the greater good and good things are happening. But then I go, well, what am I doing here? Why is that me? You know? So my new normal is trying to say, okay, you know, breathe, you belong here. This is what you've been called to do, as opposed to, you know, force anything to happen. Because everything we've done, from the films to the, you know, getting stem cell treatments for veterans to all these things, I haven't tried to do any of it. It's just kind of fallen into my lap. And so it's literally, I feel like I'm a facilitator, and I just need to stay in that facilitator connector mode, and I'll be all right.
Wow, no, I can totally relate with you on that level. I'm not a veteran myself. I'm a trans woman, and here I am helping to train veterans and adaptive athletes, and that imposter syndrome thing is pretty legit.
It's ugly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how it rears its head. But you know, they say like 2/3 of people struggle with it, right? And so we're not alone. Most people have those thoughts, right? I'm not good enough, I'm not, you know, but they don't know why that keeps popping up in their head. So it's
Can you
daily practice. Trust me, it comes up all the time still.
Yeah. Can you speak to a little more about, for those that aren't familiar with the term imposter syndrome, what it is, and what inspired you to want to write a book about it to educate others on it?
Oh yeah, good question. So for those who don't know, imposter syndrome is basically that feeling that you're not good enough, that you don't, you know, that you don't belong there, that something happened extraordinarily out, you know, someone must have pulled strings for you, you know, you didn't earn it, essentially. Like, it's those feelings constantly happening, right? And I was at, it happens a lot for CEO and business people, right? Because there's a lot of pressure you put on yourself, and, you know, owning your failures and all that sort of thing. But I found myself, you know, I created these 9 integrated health centers across Alaska and Washington. We had, you know, 120 employees at one point, physical therapists, anesthesiologists, chiropractors, like you name it, everybody working under the same roof. And I'm going the whole time, like, wait, I'm CEO of this thing? Like, how did that happen, right? And I never really understood the toll that took on me, like from an emotional standpoint, right? So I think down the line, I was at a CEO conference and somebody brought it up, and I was like, wait, that describes me perfectly. Like, it was actually Alex Sharfin's conference. And I was like, I have to look more into this. And the more I dug into it, I was like, that is me. Why have I not heard about this until now? Because this is something so many people struggle with, right? So every time I feel like I would do something that I would consider miraculous to me, like, oh, wow, I did something neat, or, you know, I grew this business, or I pushed out of my comfort zone and met this person, or whatever, or facilitated this, I would minimize my hand in it, right? Like, how did, you know, it would have happened without me, you know, those sort of things. So that's when I really started diving in. I just started documenting my own journey and then trying to figure out ways to cure it for me. And then and that's how the book kind of came about. So
You see this a lot in veterans too?
not as much, you know, to be honest with you, I don't. But I think in that transition life where you're going, okay, now what am I, right? Like, I think there is some of that, especially as, you know, I've become friends with so many of them, people like Teresa and good friends, you know, AJ Richard and some other people, like, they've created some amazing things, but then I feel like there might be some second guessing behind it as well, you know? So yeah, I think with the veteran piece, if I could just quickly tell you guys that story, I was covering one of my clinics up in Anchorage, and I got an email one day and they just said, hey, we're shooting a documentary on stem cell treatments. We know you do it, and you're one of the only people doing it in Alaska. Like, we have a Silver Star recipient who needs it badly. Would you treat him? So looked into him, was like, yes, absolutely. So he comes, we get him treated. I learned he has a special needs son as well with cerebral palsy. I said, we got to treat him as well. And then another gentleman he was in the battle with, treated him as well. And my life was transformed at that moment. It was like, you know, in that meeting with him originally, like, I can't describe it to you, but it was like the energy of hearing what he had been through and what he's struggling through still, like, just changed the path I was on, like, in that moment. it was like, oh, I'm worried about, you know, employees and bogged down in the CEO land and all this other stuff. And I go, now I want to do something bigger. Like now I know I can have a greater impact helping people that have been through these things. So that's really where it began. And that turned into a bigger documentary called Wise Endurance, where it kind of journeys the evolution of the nonprofit Healing Our Heroes Foundation. And just kind of how it all came about, and shows the treatments and all that. It's kind of crazy. So that's where that began. And then that got me wanting to do more documentaries to really highlight the good that's being done.
That's exciting. And what kind of, I think you're involved with some research around that as well.
Yeah, that's a super cool project. So we are actually taking now 9 veterans down to Costa Rica and going through Ayahuasca treatment and ceremony. And we are actually partnered up with a couple universities and got a couple major companies backing it from a tech perspective for us to do before and after testing of brain waves and blood tests and you name it. And so we're going to look at all the biomarkers before and after that to see how that fits into the emotional healing component of what we do. That's
awesome.
That's
and
exciting.
Are those people that have also gone through the stem cell treatment, or this is kind of a separate?
No, some have, a couple have, yeah, but no, it's people that are still on that path to healing. And we see, you know, when I started really piecing this together and I was trying to reframe what a hero was, I looked at all the different aspects that you need to do to really repurpose your life, right? And so to me now, the acronym HEROES is healing, emotional healing, repurposing, right? Finding that new purpose for what you're doing. What occupation are you in? What empowerment are you giving? And then the service behind to help all the other people. So it was like that. We're trying to find therapies that fit within those, that acronym to actually highlight, right? To actually show that we're doing good. And we're trying to partner with other groups. There's a group called Metrics, who are friends of mine that started a really cool company that actually tracks impact data for major corporations and nonprofits, et cetera, to show where the dollars are going. And so we're partnering with them on that as well.
Awesome.
I love that acronym. Can you explain what the acronym is again?
Yeah. So I looked at, you know, I was like, okay, somebody's got to identify in this journey, right? So you come in and you go, where am I? If I'm in pain, I can't think of anything else. So then you got to figure out, is it emotional pain? Is it physical pain? Is it you know, what's going on? And so I just said, well, the health piece would be things like physical therapy, right? It'd be things like stem cell treatment. It'd be things like chiropractic. I'm trying to create something that's a little bit alternative to the VA, right? So something that actually is showing better efficacy and is putting the person first. I don't want to bash what the VA is doing because it's wonderful people doing wonderful work there. But I think that the system's a little bit, you know, dated. And so we're trying to be that new normal, right? So H would be the healing. E would be the emotional healing, right? So we have a coaching program called Purpose and Connection that they'll be going through. We also have, you know, strategic partnerships with group like Heroic Heart out of New York, which is a nonprofit that does work with ayahuasca for veterans and stuff like that. And there's groups that do ibogaine treatment, all these things. So just looking at how can we really dial into the emotional component to find those hidden wounds, right? Those psychosomatic wounds that are still going to manifest somewhere in their life. And then repurpose, right? We're highlighting the good work that people like Force Blue are doing, or FitOps, or people like that. Merging Vets and Players is another good organization doing work there. And then occupational work, just, you know, trying to partner with different organizations to say, are you hiring veterans? Are you helping put them first? And then the empowerment piece is really about just kind of uplifting yourself, but uplifting others, you know, going through daily routine, like having all that together. And then the service is always giving back to the people behind you that might be on that journey right behind you, right? Like I can't think of another way to put a dent in this enormous issue.
What a beautiful map of a hero's journey.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I agree. I appreciate it. It kind of was this epiphany I had one day in New York recently, actually. I woke up and I'm like telling my wife, you know, like, this is incredible. And she's like, okay, go to sleep. Like, what are you doing?
Write it down. I don't.
Not a
later.
Write it down. You have an idea every day. You know.
So what are some of the challenges that you have faced, you know, on this journey of your own in helping getting this started and with everything that you've been working on and dealing with your own imposter syndrome as well?
Oh, man. Yeah, great question. So I think some of the struggles for me were like, first of all, like, who am I to try to do this, right? Like, and I actually had a close friend and business partner of mine go, you are the person that has to do this. Like, you have to be that person, right? I think some of the struggles are, instead of sitting still and shining a light out and saying, trying to attract people to what you're doing, like, I have this habit of wanting to go out and save you, to go out and bring you to shore, right? Where I can't be doing that. So I think that's a struggle. I think, you know, it's tough, right? Like, I want to save every person, but they have to be wanting to be saved as well, right? So there is that dynamic that's been happening. But the more I'm on these Zoom calls and just hearing the pain, like, I'm realizing that I have to protect how much I wear that, right? I'm also very empathic, so that wears on you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are some of the successes that you found in this new normal that you're
Yeah, I think some of the major successes that I'm seeing, and I'm super excited to maybe connect with you guys after we take this group down to Costa Rica as well, because it's going to be a pretty awesome group. But it's in the regenerative medicine front, right? Like, we had a gentleman that we treated who was literally shot in the head in Afghanistan, and this is, you know, years ago, but since then had never been able to touch his head, had, you know, or it would send lightning shocks through his body, like all this craziness. And they're like, well, let's try to treat him. And all we did was IV infusion with him. But he literally called me crying. Get emotional talking about it. So he literally called me crying one night, and he's like, man, this is insane. My wife just touched my head, nothing happened. I'm freaking out. Is this even normal? Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's those sort of things that are really making it worth it for us.
It's exciting. And what put you down the regenerative medicine route?
Yeah, good question too. So, you know, when sports medicine into chiropractic, as a chiropractor, the old chiropractic model of like the adjustment cures everything, and that's like all we can do, like, never really resonated with me. Like, it just didn't make any sense. It's like, you know, if you have all these different medical providers with these different skill sets, why not use them all for the good of the patient? Like, seems like common sense, but maybe it's not. And so when we started integrating our health centers and bringing MDs on and nurse practitioners and, you know, PTs and everybody, I was a little, I love that we were doing injections instead of, say, surgeries or opioids or medications for pain, but it never sat great with me that it was still like a steroid or something like that, right? And so I started researching regenerative medicine in about 2012, 2013, and we had it going in the clinics by 2014. And it, you know, since then it was like, well, I have a huge passion for this. You know, we've done documentaries on pioneers in the field. I've been to India and China and all these places to meet with like some of the people doing it at the highest level. And I'm convinced it's the future, right, of medicine, right, is getting back to natural, because that's really the tenets of, you know, chiropractic was based on as well. But I think that's where it led me, and I was like, I got to know more about this. I went back to school and got a fellowship in it and whatever, just to feel like I knew more about it. And the more I learn, the more I'm excited.
What are some of the regenerative fronts that you are seeing right now that excite you?
Good question. I think what's being done with exosomes is super exciting. I don't know if you or your audience is familiar with exosomes, but it's, you know, the inside of the cell coming out, right? It's the power pack of the cell, if you will. And so it's not a cellular material, but it's the bioactives, right? It's the stuff that is actually, you know, signaling for cells to come there. So I think that's really neat because then there's not all this debate about where the cell came from or anything like that. So I think that's really good. The other things I'm excited about are, not to get too nerdy, but like the induced pluripotent stem cells that they're doing, like in Japan. I think that's pretty amazing. You know, eventually taking just a cheek cell and then working with the genes of it for a while to make it go down back in time, basically, to be a stem cell that could then differentiate for you and be your own medicine just from your cheek. I think we're less than 10 years away from that. So I think there's really cool things happening. You know, I'm involved with a project called A Race for Forever with a good friend of mine, Dr. Amy Killen, who's an MD out of Utah. And we're really looking at tons of different health, longevity, all this sort of data to make it, you know, distill it down to the general public, right? To help them track their own kind of successes and that sort of thing.
What are some of the things that you feel like, you know, just anybody off the street should know about taking their health into their own hands and how to go about trying to get healthier and navigating the system? Because for so long, you know, the Western medicine model has been, you go see the doctor and whatever the MD says is law, and you don't question it. You just do what you're told. I mean, I do think already the culture has shifted to ask questions. Thank you, Dr. Google, for that. That you can always kind of do your own research, but I still see that there's a huge portion of the population that they just, you know, I'll even ask family members and they say they're just doing it because that's what the doctor said, or a friend told them this other random treatment, you know. So where do you feel like, you know, what are the steps people should take to help start taking their health in their own hands and understanding what's going on with their body?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Because where do you go for the research? Like, what's the trusted resource?
Yeah.
Whether it be, like, where do you go? So I think the first thing is to only have providers in your life that you feel like you can have an open, honest dialogue with, right? People that are willing to tell you, I don't know, but I'll look into it, as opposed to like, don't do that because I don't know anything about it, which I think we see way too often, right? We ran into that a lot in the early days of stem cell, which was like, hey, these people are doing these stem cell treatments. I think it could help my knee. What do you think? Be safe, you know, get the hardware in your knee. It's like, that's such an irresponsible, you know, recommendation. So I think the more that you can empower yourself by questioning your providers, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Not necessarily like, you know, from a negative standpoint, but more like asking why and then getting to the deeper why and then getting to the deeper why behind that, right? Because it is, hey, do you think I should do stem cell? No. Why not? You know, I don't think it's been proven. Well, what's, you know, where could I go to find the studies on that? You know, like what's the natural lineage of the questions to get to an actual result where the person goes, okay, I've actually researched this. I feel like I know some things, right? There's also really good documentaries and stuff that have come on where you can hear other providers that are, you know, leaders in those fields kind of discussing the successes that they're having. And that's with anything, right? Like our goal is to do with RFF, which is that Race for Forever project, is to actually do mini trials, but we call them MENTs, right? So like experiments, stuff like that, so that people can go, oh, I tried laser therapy for this and here are my results, and then have it all housed in one database so that people can go, okay, well, looks like, you know, 60 people tried that and 20 said it was good, so maybe I'll give it a shot, right? It's like the power of the internet and the power of data to actually drive the decision, as opposed to like the white coat saying, no, I decided no.
All right. So same question that she just asked you, but with adaptive athletes, whether it's somebody who is now in a wheelchair or some life-changing physical situation has happened to them, or even invisible situation has happened to them.
Yeah.
What would you recommend as the path for the listener who's in this situation right now and listening to this podcast?
Well, you guys, yeah, Movement RX, right? You know, that's a great question. I've got somebody I talk to quite a bit on the adaptive athlete front who's actually wanting to do a podcast to actually get all of the people with, say, special needs coming together to actually have an open forum and communication about these things, because it feels like everyone's kind of siloed in, you know, you've lost a limb or you have this thing going on, right? And so I feel like the more open communication about all those things can help. And then just knowing what your options are, right? What do you guys do with Movement RX for that?
As far as like recommendations for people?
Yeah, I'd be curious. I would love to be able to tell people.
Yeah, I mean, with us, it's typically like whoever their provider is, we'll hear how they feel about their medical care. And it depends on, you know, where they're coming to us in their injury. We have some people that, you know, they've just had their amputation and they're still very new to this new normal. And then we work with people who have had an injury for many, many years. So it depends on what the new problem is. But, you know, we'll work with them on basically helping them navigate the resources they have available. So knowing, okay, we are going to be within the limits of their insurance more often than not. So we say, okay, let's look at what insurance you have, what providers are coming up. You know, obviously we'll maybe take a look at the list with them and see, is there somebody we recognize that we know, that we trust in the community, that's not just, oh, you're all of a sudden having shoulder pain because you've been more active in your wheelchair. Oh, let me have you go. Either one, I'll just give you a steroid injection, or yeah, go to therapy and do the same 5 TheraBand exercises. Like somebody who looks at the person as a whole, somebody who looks at the person as a whole and maybe can add another piece to it that us as their PTs are missing. So it's usually more of a dialogue of let's help you navigate what resources you have available, and we'll try and point them in directions that we know. Like if somebody's wanting other adjunct therapies such as acupuncture, massage, like we have a network of people that we recommend. But just the main thing for us is having that conversation of, okay, so you have this new problem that's popped up. If it's within the scope of our practice, then we're talking to them about, okay, how's your sleep? What other life changes, what other life things are going on that are playing into this? And, you know, we address what we can within our practice. That's not just, let me give you these TheraBand exercises. We're not that kind of PT clinic. But being able to spend the time in looking at the person as a whole on their health, and then whatever, you know, trying to find those other resources that if it's beyond us, okay, let's try to find you a provider that's still going to be speaking the same language and wanting you to get back to, if you're doing CrossFit, like adapted CrossFit, that's going to be your thing, not just, oh, well, you can reach your sink. That's all you need to do in life. Like, you know, finding those other practitioners that really care about, you know, overall wellness and quality of life, rather than, oh, you can do the bare necessities and you're functioning. I think that's the biggest struggle for people who are coming out of the traditional physical therapy and the traditional medical care, especially right after an injury, is you get to good enough. You can function in life to where you're not going to die if you go home. So that's all you need to be. And then it leaves people in this gap of, well, I'm not where I want to be. Like, yes, you're in a new normal place, so you may not be doing the same activities that you were before the injury, but that doesn't mean you're stuck in this, like, I can just move around my house and that's it. So, you know, we love being able to be that almost like a stepping stone for people to help guide that transition if people are struggling there. So yeah, really just being a resource as much as we can and trying to help people with what they have and helping them navigate the system, because we know what they should be looking for, and helping them learn the questions to be asking their providers so they know that they're getting good care, you know, in another branch of healthcare that's outside of, you know, our physical therapy scope.
Yeah, I love that, right? Like, you're actually helping people thrive and giving them the tools to do that, as opposed to like, well, here's where I'm going to set your ceiling. You know what I mean? Yeah. I love that. And that's such good passion out of you guys. And I've met Teresa as well so many times, and it's just amazing work that you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, I mean, we love what we get to do with the adaptive crew, but just, you know, our physical therapy practice. And that's what drew me to the company when I first started with them a couple years ago, is that, you know, it is so different from the traditional model. And that's what I love about functional medicine, which I don't know that, I'm sure maybe it was kind of a thing when I was younger, but it's just really been in the last few years that it's gotten a lot bigger, and I think more becoming more mainstream, if you will, of people maybe going outside of their insurance to get the care that they know they deserve, and to get them to that next level, not just, oh, well, let's address the symptom. Well, let's see what is going on deeper that is also leading to that, you know, looking at hormones and things like that.
Absolutely. And even psychosomatic, right? Like what sort of hidden emotional wound is going to keep showing up over and over and over again, manifesting itself different places until you address it, right?
Well, and that's such a good point. Even in the adaptive strength and conditioning classes, when the adaptive athlete goes from being in a clinical environment to reintegration socially, finding your community, what happens a lot of the times is the person wants to go right back into being the athlete or the peak power that they were at before their normal changed. And what's really nice is in the group class situation, they're making community and finding ways on how to apply their new normal through other athletes that are there. And then also how to cope and deal with those moments where you just get so frustrated at everything and you go from 0 to 10. How do you cope with that? You know, whether it's deep breathing or whether it's finding social support. So yeah, this is really, really good stuff that we're doing. Yeah.
I love it.
So with Healing Our Heroes, what kind of outreach are you guys doing, and how do people come to find you and seek treatment? Because I feel like a lot of times with those invisible wounds, they know they have it, but they feel like, I'm going about my life good enough, and not realizing that they can be better, feel better, and that there are treatments out there to help with that. So how, what kind of outreach and how can people find you?
So people can find more information on Healing Our Heroes at healingourheroesfoundation.org. And not to be confused with healingourheroes.net, which happened when we were actually on Dallas News in
Oh no.
documentary. Yeah, they say, you know, oh, must be healingourheroes.net, and they put it up, and tons of people called them.
Oh,
Wonderful people. Tana, they're awesome people in San Diego as well, doing a lot of work with biofeedback, but not the same thing. So yeah, it's healingourheroesfoundation.org, and yeah, they can get involved there and learn more about the journey and go deeper and check out some of the content that we have on there, just kind of showing some of the stories of transformation.
So to the people who are listening right now, what RX or what prescription would you offer to that person who is listening and just connecting with this message today?
Ooh, good question. I would say reach out, right? Like, I think when you feel like you're connecting and you feel like there's a reason for it, reach out. Like, get with me or get with you guys on LinkedIn. I'm available as well. It's Kyle Bergquist on LinkedIn. You can always email me too at kyle@servingimpact.com. But, check out the content, try to go deeper. Feel free to reach out. I respond to every email as well, believe it or not. I want to make sure that no one's getting left behind on that front. And that if you have questions and you feel like we can help you in your journey get further, we want to be those people to do it.
Yeah, and I have one more follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
Back to the imposter syndrome bit. So I've met quite a few veterans who can qualify and can participate in these awesome different initiatives that are happening. But what I hear from them are, they usually tell me, well, my wound's an invisible wound, so it's not that big of a deal. The money and all of that should go to the people who really need it. I don't really need it.
Oh my gosh. You're so spot on with that. Like, that is the number one thing I see all the time, right? Like, I'll have people that are signed up to get care that'll cancel the last minute and literally be like, I feel like it should go to somebody more deserving, right?
Right.
How do you
handle that?
Yeah, I think, ask the question, why aren't you worth it, right? Like, why are you not worth it? What does your family deserve from you, right? Like, maybe it can't be about you. Maybe, what does your family deserve you to be? Like, if you can not hide from the emotional wound, but actually hit it head on, like, and go through it and move forward, like what would that do to your home life? Like what would that do to your interaction with your kids or your spouse or, you know, significant other, whatever, like what, even your relationship to the world, like, you know, yes, you are worth it, and you are, quite frankly, somebody who we need to be a shining example of what's possible after service.
Mm-hmm.
And still with, because I was wanting to go back to the imposter syndrome as well. So along the same lines of, you know, if you could go back and give yourself advice, or somebody who was in your shoes at that place in their career, realizing that, you know, you were dealing with imposter syndrome and it was maybe holding you back a little bit, what advice would you give to somebody who, you know, maybe this is the first time they've heard of imposter syndrome, or, you know, just that's a struggle that they have? What advice would you give them to help move past that and grow?
Ooh, well, I have 20 something different ways to combat it in the book.
Perfect.
Go read the book, you know, it'll be out in the fall. But no, on a serious note, like I feel like if I can dive into that a little deeper,
Yeah, absolutely.
for me, I never really knew what it was, but it was the reason, like, even in school, like I would feel like I was the dumbest. Like if I raise my hand, I'm going to turn bright red and just be super embarrassed because I don't know even that I'm asking a question that I should be asking, right? It's like, it started there and then it's manifested so many times over my life. And so I think the first thing is realize you have it, right? Like if you can actually diagnose it and say, okay, I got this thing, or I think I have symptoms of this thing, you're one step further towards conquering it, right? Like not knowing that it's holding you back is the bigger problem. So I think it's like naming your demon, right? Like, okay, I have this thing, it's holding me back, it's negative self-talk, but it's actually a syndrome. Now, how do I combat it? And then dive into things. I think when you actually take a lot of time on your own self-care, right? Like you're putting yourself first on everything, it makes it a lot easier for you to take it easier on yourself. So, you know, are you hydrating in the morning? Are you walking? Are you running? Are you exercising? Are you, you know, taking downtime? Are you meditating? Are you de-stressing? All those sort of things are crazy invaluable. If I start my day without a meditation, I feel it. I'm self-doubting all day long and the talk's coming non-stop. But if I start my day where all that stuff gets to, you know, go from chaos to clarity, then I'm owning my day. So I feel like that's a big place to start, right? Like find a time to be still in the morning, for sure.
Which is a perfect plug, because the episode that will air before yours talks all about mindfulness and meditation. So giving both a listen is just going to set everyone listening up for success, and being able to, you know, own their day and, you know, take ownership of the imposter syndrome, because I think it's something that everybody struggles with, whether they know the name of it or not. Like that's the first time I heard that term, I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely a thing. I think I was first aware of it in physical therapy school, where you have to go in and do these practicals, and there's a professor watching you and you feel like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but fake it till I make it. And it's funny because that mentality kind of continues to carry on even once I do know things and I am, you know, an expert in what I do. There's always a little piece of that, no matter what we're moving into in life, especially anytime there's a new step up in life. You know, you take ownership of some new role or some big opportunity comes up. Yes, you say it's either a chance or, oh, I don't really deserve this. Hopefully nobody figures that out.
Oh man,
It's such a common thing. So I love that it has a name, and that, you know, that's something that's being talked about a lot more often, for people to realize like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to gain confidence in myself. And it's kind of a scary thing, but it goes along with everything we've talked about of knowing that it's okay to reach out and seek help for any mental health issues, but especially these invisible wounds that, you know, everybody to some degree is dealing with something, but especially after a traumatic brain injury or dealing with PTS, CTE, all of these acronyms that, you know, most people are familiar with. But, you know, can you speak a little bit to the main, you know, folks that you're working with and things that you're that Healing Our Heroes is helping with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll get to that in a second. You made me think of it. So the original title of the book was going to be Imposter Syndrome, What the Hell Am I Doing Here? I Don't Want. And it was from a Radiohead song, right? Creep, like, they're my favorite band. It was like, oh, I'm going to work this in. Like, this is too perfect. So what we're doing, or what we started doing, is trying to put together clinical trials looking at how can regenerative medicine and some of these other therapies help with traumatic brain injury, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, all those sort of things. So that's really where it started, but I feel like it's morphed into be so much more, that it isn't just, combat, overpressure wound stuff, like chronic concussion stuff. Like, that's not where we are anymore. I feel like it's part of what we're doing, but really we're trying to look at the person as a whole and where are they at and where can they identify along this journey, and then how can we move them one step up continuously, right? So that those terrible thoughts never even enter their mind.
Yeah. So I definitely encourage anyone listening that still is like, I still don't really even understand what any of this is about, or if it would be a good fit for me, to check them out on their website and reach out, whether you think it's a good fit or not. If you're a veteran, reach out, and like I said, Kyle answers all of his emails. So, if you have any questions, Healing Our Heroes Foundation is a great resource. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thanks. So again, thanks to our sponsors, Highleap, RX Smart Gear, and the Ready State for those coupon codes. As we sign off, Kyle, please speak again to the websites that people can check out and where people can find you on the socials and Healing Our Heroes Foundation, all that fun stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's Kyle Bergquist on LinkedIn. You can also go to healingourheroesfoundation.org, and then also our site for helping providers work on their businesses is servingimpact.com. So those are the three ways. And then Kyle at servingimpact.com is my email, so please reach out and I'm happy to connect and see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, and we will see everybody on the next episode of My New Normal podcast.
Appreciate it.